Hey Homeworthy, I'm Amy. Welcome to my home in California. Come in.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hi, my name is Amy Pigliacampo. I'm an interior designer, and welcome to my home in Topanga Canyon, California. So this house, the first time that I saw it, I wasn't supposed to see it. It was not for sale. It was across the street from a house that I was looking at for the third time. The first time I saw it, there were lots and lots of bright colors in the home. From an architectural perspective, it definitely has like a little bit of a Spanish influence. I would almost call the style like 90s Bohemian a little bit. It's definitely not one true style. So that's been interesting to work with from our perspective. I love Topanga Canyon. The first time that I moved to Los Angeles, I lived in 3 different areas. This was the first one that we moved to. And I was really struck by how I could be technically living in this really crazy large city and also feel like I'm living in the middle of nowhere. And so that's probably my favorite thing about this house, is the way that it is situated on the land. And we really feel like we are like living this quiet country life. And it takes about 5 minutes to get out of the canyon itself into, the valley. It's 10 minutes to Santa Monica. And then it's kind of what I think of as Los Angeles, but to have that proximity and then to be surrounded by so much nature every day, like just waking up to it and watching sunsets, and it's a really special experience. So that's probably my favorite thing, is the location and how the people that designed and built the house were very much considering the location in terms of how they situated like certain sight lines. And so that's probably what I appreciate and love the most, is that the house is really designed for you to look outside, and it's nothing but trees and birds and frogs and coyotes and all kinds of like really beautiful stuff. So that's probably my favorite thing. And then my second favorite thing is that it's very comfortable. I have kids, they're little and they're crazy, and everyone feels very free in the house, and there's a lot of interesting spaces for them to play, and the house just sort of lends itself to being connected and being out in the main spaces because the bedrooms are kind of small. So that, the location, there's just like a very magical feeling here that it's really, I have never lived in a house, and I have moved probably 8 or 9 times in the past 12, 13 years. This house feels the best, and it's hard to say why, it just does. There's just a really special energy here, and I hope it's our forever house, but who knows? So we don't really have a formal entryway in this house. It's actually really hard to find the front door. The house is very, very casual. This is our most natural front door, and we walk right into our living room, dining room, kitchen. So we have a fireplace over here that we're hoping to try out this Christmas. We haven't actually had a fire in this particular fireplace yet, but this zone in here is our living room, but we have no TV in this space. So this is more for like reading. There's a lot of like hanging out on the couch in the early morning when the kids get up. My favorite piece of furniture in the whole house is this sofa. And it's by a company called Row. They have a huge showroom at High Point. I got invited to design one of their showrooms for Market last year, and this sofa was part of my design. And I actually came up with that like literally the week that we moved into this house. So in no way was I thinking about what was going to happen here. And when I saw this sofa in person for the first time, I was like, interesting, like what, maybe could look good in my house. I don't think I could have intentionally created something that would have fit the space and the colors in this house more perfectly. It's also really, really comfortable. And last Christmas, we had 3 grown men napping on it, which I thought was a really ringing endorsement from a comfort perspective. So that's kind of the main event in the living room. The coffee table is inspired by sort of brutalist design, but it is by 4 hands. The rug is one of my favorite rug vendors, NK, and they are part of Jaipur Living, which is kind of my go-to rug vendor for clients. And so this whole space is really just, it's like for reading, there's a lot of snuggling with my kids, there's a lot of fort building. Usually this whole zone is in many different states of Lego bridges and wood blocks and pillow forts. So right now this is the ideal styled version, but it's usually a bit more deconstructed than it is right now. One of my favorite things about this house are the wood beams. However, when we bought the house, all the spaces in between the beams were filled with something called reed screening, which is sort of like a straw mat. Like maybe you would make a placemat out of it, or you might see it like on the inside of a Thai restaurant. It felt really distracting from the beams. And so we found a contractor that cut it out. They didn't want to cut it out. It was kind of not the easiest process. And then underneath was plywood, and we whitewashed it to kind of tone it so that it would blend a little bit more with the beams. And it's kind of like one of the prettiest features about the house. And from a cost savings perspective, you know, the ideal version would be to go back and add tongue and groove. That would have been a really significant cost. And so, you know, kind of the whole theme of this house is what can we work with that's already here? Can we like really lean into the materials and find a way for them to make sense with our aesthetic without completely ripping them out. These chairs are also from Row. I love them because they move around really easily. My kids love them because they spin around, which is not my favorite, but it's cool if you're sitting on the couch and we have a lot of people over. You know, people can sit over here separately. You can push them around. Eventually the fireplace will be lit, and you know, you can enjoy it from that perspective. Or if we have a really big group of people, they kind of scoot closer to the rug, and then we have extra seating. But they're super comfortable, and they're almost like what you would call a chair and a half. So you could sort of put 2 people in these chairs. They're fun, they're really comfortable. And then another thing, I am borrowing these paintings right now from a local artist, Danielle Hutchins. She is a painter here in Topanga Canyon, and all of the pigments that she uses for her paint, she makes all of her paint herself. And the pigments in the paint are all sourced locally. She goes out and finds rocks and clay and grinds them up and creates her own paints. So she's letting me babysit these for almost 6 months now. So I'm pretty attached to them. This was actually a mirror that I had before we moved in Colorado. It's a surprisingly inexpensive mirror. It's from Amazon. And at the time, the room that I was buying it for, there was no budget, so that worked great. And then as I was unpacking in this house, trying to see what I had that would maybe work, I pulled this one out, and I loved how it fit in this space so much that I actually bought another one that was slightly bigger. They kind of give the room like a portal effect. Like, it sounds crazy, but I always feel like you could sort of walk through that mirror and exit the house. So having 2 of them in here, it kind of does interesting things, like at different times of day with the light, or people walking in certain doors. It can be a little bit startling sometimes. So here we are just past the entryway, and I have my kitchen on the right, dining room on the left. One thing I want to point out is these saltillo floors are original to the house. When we moved in, these tiles were awful. There was dried dog pee on them. There were all kinds of stains. I spent a couple of days on my hands and knees trying everything I could think of to clean them, and they would not get clean. And so then I started researching, and I found one guy that would come out and they took the finish off. They basically sanded these tiles down to where they looked brand new, like they had just been installed, and he resealed them, told us how to properly take care of them, like the right way to clean them versus the wrong. And what was it was definitely my husband's least favorite thing about the house. He could not stand this tile. Once we refinished it, and like as things started to come together, it's now his favorite thing about the house because these floors are indestructible. They're not precious. People come in from the pool like just sopping wet, and you can leave a trail of water on them and it just goes away. So they're kind of ideal, especially if you have dogs and kids. You just have to clean them after the fact. And so here we're gonna go into the kitchen. The kitchen was probably the worst thing about this house, in my opinion. I spend a lot of my time in the kitchen, and the kitchen felt like it was coming at you. The proportions of the appliances, there was like a commercial range that was way too large for the space. There was a very ornate range hood situation that was copper, if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah, it was copper. And then there was this like fresco of tiles, like some sort of Tuscan scene that made absolutely no sense with what else was happening in the house. And everything, the lighting, everything was too big. We had like a bunch of cabinets up here, and when you were in the space, I felt like everything was closing in. So this was our biggest project to date. What made this an interesting project was when this house was built, whoever built it did not run flooring underneath the cabinetry, which is a huge mistake. You're always supposed to run your flooring wall to wall, no matter what, set the cabinets on top. That's not what they did. So if we wanted to change the layout of the kitchen, we would have had this almost impossible task of trying to match 30-year-old saltillo tile. You would have seen where the tile was new versus old. And I just decided that was not something that I was willing to get into. And so we kept the floor print the same. We had all these cabinets custom made. I felt like there was enough warmth happening in this house already between like this terracotta floor and the warm beams and ceiling. Like we needed something to juxtapose that a little bit. And so for a variety of reasons, we ended up going with this, I don't even know what to call it. It's sort of a laminate, but it's this Italian company, and this material, unlike a painted cabinet, which can get chipped really easily, this stuff is very, very durable and strong. And I also liked that it had this smooth, matte feeling to it, which is a really nice contrast to sort of the irregular saltillo. And I really wanted to, again, like juxtapose some of these more Bohemian elements of the house with some really strong lines and contrast from a color perspective, material perspective, which is why we did a waterfall on this seating area here. We did like a really sharp edge so that this felt kind of brutalist. That was what I wanted to have happen. I wanted it to feel like a little bit aggressive. And so we have kind of this like concrete finish for the countertops. Again, I have kids, we use our kitchen all the time. I wanted really, really durable materials that we could clean up pretty easily. We changed out all the lighting in the space. There was really large blown glass, colorful, crazy fixtures in here. So we took those out. I really liked the super kind of brutalist industrial vibe with like the perforated metal of these fixtures, and also the range hood. I really don't like range hoods. I wouldn't have them at all if they weren't necessary at times. And I really love how this one feels super, super modern and weird and kind of spacey. And again, really looking for juxtaposition to some of the softer materials in the house, like the tile and the beams and curves and stuff. And then over here, we took out, again, more cabinets. And then what we lost by removing some of those upper cabinets, we regained by redoing the pantry. And this is probably like my favorite part of the kitchen because this holds everything, including our microwave. And I don't like microwaves, but everything is in these cabinets and they kind of look like just a wall because we did them in this white. So it's just like a really great way to kind of keep the kitchen nice and open and light. And then all of our stuff that we have to have stays in these cabinets. So this built-in was original to the house. When we bought it, it was, I don't know, kind of like a cherry finish. Again, very red-orange, like everything else in the house. And originally my plan was to tear it out and do something more modern, like what we have in the kitchen. And just as we got into the project, you know, any change that you decide to make, there's a cascade of costs that come along with that, electrical, lighting, whatnot. And I felt bad about ripping it out. And again, like everything in this house, it was like, well, is there a way to keep this and to make it work for our aesthetic? And so I had these guys that have actually done a lot of refinishing for me. They came and they stripped it and they bleached it and put a matte clear coat on it. And I think there's still moments where I wish that I had changed it to match the rest, only from like a storage perspective. But then the flip side of that is I'm really proud that we didn't rip it out. And I think that, you know, it's part of the house and I'm glad that we kept it, even though, you know, it runs a little bit counter to exactly what I would want, but it's also like kind of a nice tie-in between the kitchen and the dining room, which is essentially like in the same room as the kitchen. It's sort of an open floor plan on the first floor. We also had a crazy light fixture to contend with here that was not at all what we wanted. And I really wanted to have some elements like the range hood, like this light fixture that felt super futuristic. Again, just this idea of like contrast and juxtaposition. This table, we had this in our last house. It is not the original table. We broke the original one. This is the replacement. And we had it in such a different way in our last house, and my thinking is, how are we going to make that work here? And we had these Philippe Starck chairs that my husband had when we started dating 16 years ago, and I hated these chairs. And I knew that they were expensive, and I knew that they were coming with us, and we had them in multiple houses. I never liked them. And then as we were putting together a plan for this house, I was like, oh my God, I know exactly what we need. We need these chairs. They're cold, they're metal, they're silver. They're gonna contrast all of this warmth that's happening in here. And so the chairs are back in the picture. We almost sold them a bunch of times. They're kind of my favorite thing about how this table feels. And then I ordered these end chairs from a company in Copenhagen. And they really finish off this kind of like brutalist idea. I love them. They're menacing and scary looking, and they completely change like the way this table looks compared to its last life in our last home. So this kind of vignette of my dining room into the kitchen is really, I think it tells like the biggest story of like this brutalist idea on top of a Bohemian sort of foundation. So it's kind of my favorite little zone here. So from the dining room, we head into our solarium, which is where I have the bulk of my plants. I have about 200 plants in the house, in and outside in pots. And so this is kind of their main area and another hangout zone for us. So follow me. So this is our solarium. Again, when I saw the house for the first time and I saw this room, I was very relieved because I also had a lot of plants at my last house and was really concerned that they wouldn't be able to come back with me. And so in this room, this is kind of like our second living room. My son plays his drums out here. There's a lot of games that we play, but largely this is the plant room and my dog's favorite room because it's really hot in this space and he likes to hang out in here, especially when it's extra warm. But I have my disco ball here. I have my Monstera pit, as I like to call it. This was a really not attractive fountain situation. When we bought the house, there were like these 3 urns. It was a very confusing, not super pretty. So we demoed it, disconnected the water, and kind of one of my favorite features in houses is when they have internal planters, which is why LA's got a lot of that, mid-century homes. And so we turned this into a planter, and I think we're about a year after planting these and they're super happy. These are the best Monstera. This is the best Monstera leaf I've ever had in my house. So it tells me that they're really happy. So yeah, this is just kind of my happy place with so many plants, and the doors open all the way back to the corner. So it's really kind of like an indoor-outdoor space. We have these beautiful stone floors, which again, it was not my favorite thing when we bought the house, and now that I've lived with them for over a year, I would absolutely consider putting these into other projects because I love the indoor-outdoor feeling that they bring. And it's also kind of a nice alternative to concrete too. Then we have this like super modern couch from Floyd. Again, leaning into the colors in the house. This is like, I was really shocked that my husband agreed to this color when I showed him, but we have both really come to love all the terracotta tile and all of these warm undertones in the house. And again, this couch is just an example of like really leaning into what was here, but also juxtaposing like a more, really modern shape, something that's like really linear and boxy, but also happens to be really comfortable. And then we have this really cool sculptural chair from a company called Nuevo, and a wall hanging that an artist in Turkey made for me, I think. But we kind of did some custom colors here to like pick up like the little bits of blue. Again, this is, the dog uses this chair more than anyone else, but it actually is really comfortable. I would like to have more time to sit in chairs, but that's not my current life situation. So the dog enjoys it and I enjoy how it looks. Again, like with my own houses versus client projects, I don't plan things out quite as fully as I would for a client. It kind of evolves, and this room is a great example of starting with the couch and then something coming up, and we had this amazing ottoman, and I found this chair that checked a lot of boxes for me in terms of color. And now the room, it feels very intentional, but it really was more of a process that like came together over the course of probably like eight months or so to get everything in here. So let's go check out the pool in the backyard. So the pool and the grotto, as we like to call it, area is really one of the most special things about this house. You cannot in any way tell that this is back here from the street. It's a 45-foot pool, which is substantial. I still kind of can't believe that I get to live with this pool. It's just really special, and it's great in the summertime because it gets really hot in the canyon. You can't see really any houses from here except our house. So we always joke that it feels like we're kind of at a hotel. It's super nice. And every time we're back here, we're just really grateful to have it. The waterfall, again, we thought was sort of like a corny feature at first, and now we love it, and we totally get why someone put that in the first place. It's really fun. So we have this majestic sumac tree in our yard, which pretty much tells us the seasons. It changes with fall. It grows flowers in the springtime, and it's kind of special to me because I'm from the East Coast, and in Southern California we don't really have the same transition period seasonally. So this tree is kind of a nice reminder of the four seasons, not something that we always get here in LA. But this is sort of like play zone for our kids. We have 2 acres at this property, so this kind of faces our backyard, which is our little mini canyon in the canyon. And it's pretty much like just birds constantly, and at certain times of the year, frogs. We come out here with flashlights and we track frogs. They like to swim in the pool, they like to swim in the hot tub. They make a lot of noise, and it's a really special feature about living in Topanga. So all of my work up until 8 years ago was in the fashion industry. I was a visual merchandiser, I was a buyer, I was a designer, I worked at an advertising agency working with art buyers, and I started to kind of see a lot of crossover between fashion and interiors. And then of course, like moved, had a different house, was able to fix up that house. Friends would ask me to do things. And so before I officially started, calling myself a designer, I did a lot of projects just kind of as a learning experience. And then at a certain point, did a massive remodel of a house in Colorado, and that was kind of the turning point to be like, this is what I want to do. I don't really want to go back to styling. Like, this is so much more kind of just in line with my goals, and it just had like a lot more permanence than what I was doing in fashion. I would spend a lot of time, building out something really beautiful for a shoot and then tearing it down right away. And I really love that when you work in a home and you're doing interiors, like no one's hopefully getting rid of this stuff, in a few months or a few years. Hopefully it's all going to be around for 10, hopefully 20 years. And there was something really nice about being in, doing all that work and having it add up to something that people were going to get to enjoy for a really long time versus like a 5-minute shot. And so that's probably the shortest version of how I wound up in interior design. So follow me and we'll go check out my kids' rooms. So now we're going to check out my son's room. Both of the bedrooms, my kids' bedrooms in this house, are really tiny rooms. So we had to be really thoughtful about furniture and how we were going to set these rooms up. They're still little and they like to do a lot of things on the floor, so kind of keeping the room as open as possible so that they could do that was really important. But I really like how both of these spaces turned out. They're very reflective of who my kids are. And also we've collected, my husband and I, a lot of different kinds of art over the years. Nothing that's fancy art, but vintage paintings. My husband started his career as a graphic designer, and so both of us are like super nerds about font and type. And so we've been to like different like old printing houses, like one in Nashville, one in Wisconsin, and we've bought a lot of art that's either been block printed or screen printed. And so when we moved here, we actually moved from a larger house to a smaller house, and so we had to kind of reconfigure where all of our art was going to go. And I used a lot of it in my kids' rooms to kind of create these like really fun gallery walls. And it's just really playful, and there's a lot of color, and these spaces feel different from the rest of the house. A little bit busier, more colors, more like really leaning into what my kids really like as individuals, as opposed to kind of the cohesiveness of the rest of the house. I really wanted their rooms to feel like them. So I think that, I think we did a good job with that. They're very happy about it, so good sign. So now as we leave my son's room, we have this little bathroom between, which is our kids' bathroom and powder room. We actually remodeled this room. It's small, but we have this beautiful terrazzo tile in here. We painted it white. I mean, everything in this room is different except for the saltillo floors. This room was sort of like a dungeon. When we bought the house, there was dark green tile, the walls were purple. It was, for me, one of the most depressing spaces in the house, so I was very excited to remodel it last fall. And it's still, you know, what I like about it, it's small, and we got to experiment and try some really fun things and kind of keep it a little bit younger since it is my kids' bathroom. So it's really kind of a fun space. And then we're going to go into my daughter's room. My daughter's room is the sort of reflection of her brother's room on the other side. And again, we were trying to sort of optimize for floor space, and we did another gallery wall in here that's a lot more reflective of her taste. She loves rainbows and all the colors of the rainbow, and so we tried to do that with her gallery wall. She also loves cats. This rug was her choice, and so was the kind of psychedelic Liberty bedding, which I really love it. She has a really interesting way that she likes to put things together, my daughter, and so I've tried as much as possible to let go and let them inform what's happening in their space, but also I have to be okay with it. So I think we've accomplished that. It's kind of an evolving situation, but this definitely feels like her, and it's fun. I think the best compliment that someone could give me about my home, and I have actually gotten this compliment, is that it feels really warm and comfortable, and it feels relaxing. And I think that's, for me, there's something about this house that I noticed the first time that I walked in here. There was an energy and a vibe that was really hard to articulate because it wasn't exactly about what the house looked like at that time, but there was a feeling. And I think having really comfortable furnishings and sort of having this like arrangement where we can have lots of people in here comfortably, people nap on the couch, like it's just, all the furniture is comfortable and it looks cool, but also people can really hang out and chill. And that, to me, is the best compliment, is that people can come over here and feel really comfortable and at ease and not, worried that they're going to break something or mess up something. And I think we've accomplished that goal because everyone is relaxed when they're here spending time. So for me, that's the biggest compliment. Okay, so follow me upstairs. There's a lot more to see, starting with our primary bedroom. So right as we come upstairs, we pass through my office and then we enter this hallway, which I like to call the library because all of our books are here. Moving with books is a nightmare. I had 38 book boxes on this last move. However, it was very gratifying to move into some place that already had shelving. Again, these shelves, it's probably not exactly what I would do, but after living here for a year and a half and like putting all of our books in and styling it, it's a really cool feature, and I have accepted the color for now, and I feel pretty good about it. And this library hallway actually leads into our bedroom, which is a really interesting design challenge. I don't think this room was originally designed as a bedroom. I think that they designed it to be like a second family room. However, we use what we think was the primary bedroom. We use that as our office. And so it's a really big room that we have divided into sort of like our movie zone, because we like to watch a lot of movies, and we don't have a TV anywhere else in the house. There also wasn't a wall to put a TV on any other space in the house, and so this was sort of the most natural fit. When we bought this house, this whole area was painted green, like sort of a dark, not a bad green. It was pretty, but just like a lot of it. And so, you know, for now it's white, just kind of like fresh start. And then we have kind of a reading zone back here. My favorite animal-like chairs. These feel like, my kids feel like these are big stuffed animals. They're super cozy for reading. So this is kind of like a reading zone. And then we did something very controversial, which was having, it's very against feng shui to walk into the back of a bed. Is not recommended. However, this is the best view in the house. And so we fall asleep to the moon. The sun set here is incredible, and our bed faces that way, faces into the canyon, and it's just a really special spot to wake up and fall asleep. And yeah, it just makes really good use of the space. And it's a really interesting house. So, you know, just trying to like lean into some of the strange choices that are here and make them feel more intentional, make them work. We use this space so much compared to the bedroom that we had in our last house. Our kids are up here all the time. Our daughter's in the bed reading, and sometimes they all sleep up here and they camp out on the floor. It's just a really functional space, even though it's a bit odd and is difficult to photograph. It's just a great room. We use it probably more than we use the two downstairs living rooms. So it's super fun. So one of the rooms that I am secretly very proud of and also slightly ashamed of is my closet. But when I saw this house for the first time, I also felt relieved, much like the solarium that has my plants. I was wondering where my clothes were going to go. I was a wardrobe stylist for 8 years, and I actually have a lot less clothes than I used to, but you know, it's an old habit. So here we go. This is probably where I spend the second most amount of time, to the kitchen, is my closet. It's also my husband's closet, although he has a very small footprint. He does not like to have a lot of clothes, which is great because I clearly do, and I need every last inch of this closet. So I have all my dresses here. I have all the shoes, and then I have a special vintage section back here where I keep, and coats and vintage. I have my vintage Indian dresses here, and all of my coats, which a lot of these were acquired in the Colorado chapter of my life. But it gets cold enough in the canyon, so I actually wear them here in LA too. So the last thing I'm going to show you was one of the biggest selling points of this house. If you've lived in big cities, you kind of get used to not having a lot of space or not being able to like have your family stay with you or have friends stay with you. It's something that I always really, really wanted in a house. And I feel very fortunate to have that here in Los Angeles. But this house has its own apartment over the garage, which we call the studio. And it's for our family. It's for friends that like to come out and visit. And it's just a really special feature that I'm excited to show you this way. So this is our apartment, the studio, we like to call it. It is a full apartment. It is double the size of the apartment I lived in New York for 8 years. So I feel like I could easily live in this space. The views are amazing. You have like your own outdoor dining area. You have a full kitchen, which when we were remodeling the main kitchen, we used this, and I actually like it a little bit better than the kitchen downstairs because of the sink position and the window. So I do spend a bit of time up here, and I'll work here when we don't have people staying with us. So the apartment also has a fireplace. This is one of 4 fireplaces in the house. This one we have used. So it's really nice when people are staying here. Sometimes we'll like light a fire before they show up, and it's warm and it smells really nice. But this is just a really cool space for our guests. We just had people staying with us last weekend, and it's a really nice thing to be able to offer to out-of-town guests to come and stay here. We worked with a company called Mo's Home, which is one of my favorite vendors. They're actually based in Canada, and we collaborated like on all of the furniture in here. And so this space kind of has like, its own perspective in terms of a color palette, which is really cool. It feels separate from the house and kind of like its own thing. And it was also, like its own little design project. So I do like to come out here and hang out, and it's a very different feeling than the rest of the house. It's very chill out here, and people love staying here. So again, it's just super grateful to have it. It's a very grown-up feeling to have a proper guest room after years and years of living in very tiny spaces in a big city. So I actually think about this a lot. The word home for me means you're the safest place you could be, the most comfortable, the most protected, the most sort of feeling like yourself is what you feel like when you're at home. I sometimes don't leave home for 2 or 3 days if I can help it, and it's my happiest time. I have my people, I have comfortable furnishings and nature, and I feel very at peace. And so for me, the word home is peace, comfort, love, relaxation, and just like sort of the truest representation of the things that matter to you as a person. Thank you, Homeworthy, for spending so much time with us today and checking out our home. But now it's time for you to go. So thanks. See ya.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content, shopping guides, and so much more.